Hey all, Dr. Jared here, proud to be coming to you with part one of our two-part Terminate Toxins Masterclass. And really before we get started, I just want to take a moment and appreciate you for taking the time to educate yourself. One of our goals is to take a complex topic, research it for dozens of hours, and condense the material down into something that's usable within 60 to 70 minutes so that you don't have to take the time to do all the research. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is really take control of our life, specifically in the arena of health. And I appreciate you for being someone who takes responsibility for their health and takes time to educate themselves and help them and their family, doing the best we can to take control of our health, because we certainly know we're not fully in control, but the decisions that you and I make with our health do have long-term consequences and outcomes, can turn on and turn off our genes, can make a significant difference in how we feel and any disease processes that we are building. Because ultimately, the philosophy that I live by and likely you live by is we're always looking for the root cause of the problem, and we try and support our body in its ability to heal itself. As I start this today, I'm recording in the morning and I have a cup of coffee here. And, I get asked fairly frequently, like, is coffee good for you? And you can look at a lot of different studies and things that show good, bad, or indifferent caffeine content, but all the different stuff. But here's the thing: when I talk about coffee, it's not that black and white. So for instance, coffee beans are the most toxic of the beans that are consumed in America if you're not buying organic coffee. So if you're going to Starbucks, if you're drinking Folgers, if you're, and why? Well, there's a variety of reasons with the farming, but after they're harvested, almost all coffee beans that are non-organic are sprayed with a chemical called aflatoxin. Now, aflatoxin keeps mold from growing on them when they're poorly stored or when they're held for too long of a period. But aflatoxin is severely toxic. It's one of the most linked chemicals to, for instance, headaches and triggering migraines. It has all sorts of components. And so when somebody says, is coffee good for you? It's hard to say. I don't usually have the opportunity to ask 5 qualifying questions like, well, are you drinking organic? Are you putting, the creamers in it that have the chemicals and the fake flavorings and the sugars and the denatured bad fats? Like, these are some of the things that really make a significant difference in how good it is. Black organic coffee, you could likely make the argument that it has as much, if not more, benefit than harm. But you start adding all those other components like non-organic sprayed with aflatoxin, or I just can't go without my creamer. And you look at the creamers and they have artificial sweeteners and all the other stuff I just mentioned. Well, those are two different things, and they're going to have two very different outcomes, especially if you consume them 365 days a year for the majority of your adult life. The cumulative effect, even if it's a small amount, it can add up. And so I thought I'd start today, talking about what toxicity does in our body. So first of all, the onslaught of toxins that we currently get exposed to daily in America is on average over 700,000 different chemicals. There's more than 30,000 chemicals that are in foods that don't even have to be listed on the ingredient label, like the defoamer for potato chips when they're being fried and things like that. But they affect how we feel. So people who consume more toxicity tend to feel more sluggish. Their body needs to spend more energy detoxifying them. I mentioned already, but many chemicals are linked to headaches. In kids, you hear, well, my kid's not a healthy eater. I mean, ADD and ADHD is majorly linked to what children consume. And in my opinion, should be a crime how little that's looked at. In, for instance, our traditional education system, kids are drugged for ADD and ADHD, but school lunches, especially if you look at government provided school lunches, are ADD and ADHD triggers, full of food colorings, preservatives, processed foods and carbohydrates like sugar, which all trigger ADD and ADHD. So, when we talk about root cause, if you know a child that does struggle with this, looking at their diet and looking at what they consume could make a huge difference. The number one toxin consumed in America today is still medication. And again, over 90% of medications consumed in America don't address the root cause of the problem. They are not fixing a problem. They are covering it up so that people can either continue to sustain their not ideal lifestyle, or because they have to support a genetic expression that's happened in most cases because of lifestyle or behavior. And so that's not to put anybody down who's taking medication. That's to remind that if you are taking a medication and it is covering up a problem, consider thinking about what can I do to address the root cause and stop having to need to take that toxin. And from a chiropractic or neurologic standpoint, obviously, assessing your neurology through x-rays and chiropractic treatment can make a huge difference. Additionally, our Max Metabolics program, through our nutritionist Mackenzie. So if you know from a dietary standpoint or a food standpoint you need to make changes, you can schedule a complimentary life assessment with Mackenzie if you're a current client. But again, these medications, they do bioaccumulate. They build up in your body over time. And so a few other things to think about. People that deal with thyroid issues, the thyroid is believed to be the organ that is most sensitive to toxicity. So people who are consuming too much toxicities absolutely can have thyroid issues. Toxins are linked to turning on cancer genes, and are shown to influence in anywhere from 92 to 98% of cancers turning on. Toxicity is linked in multiple studies to being a factor. They affect your hormones. So this is how they affect sluggishness, but they can affect your ability to get pregnant. They can affect your hormones as you age. They can affect, they're specifically linked to sex hormones. So like I'll go into later, plastics are significantly linked to lowering testosterone as men age. In women, estrogen and progesterone, and so many other endocrine disorders or hormone disruptors. And then, weight loss resistance, or gaining weight without changing anything else, or trying to lose weight and struggling to lose it. These are all things that are linked to toxicity. So hopefully at this point, that's enough reasons to take a more serious look at what you're doing and what you're consuming, because we can't avoid everything, but we do have control of a lot of things. And we're going to go through a whole variety of areas to look at. And my hope is that you'll take 2 or 3 different things and improve and remove them from your life. And also, the action step that is probably simplest from a supplement standpoint is, if you're not doing at least 2 detoxes a year, you need to be. So the detox system that we carry is low cost. It's easy. It's 2 pills in the morning, 2 pills at night. And it just helps your body eliminate this toxicity and strengthen your liver to have a better overall functionality within. So in chiropractic, we talk about the 3 T's, the 3 types or causes of subluxation. So subluxation, if you have forgotten, is the misalignment of your spine, pinching or inflaming the neurology, which could cause pain, but will affect wherever those nerves go. So we most common think about our spine and subluxation with traumas, with sitting at your desk or your computer, with getting in a car accident, playing sports. But stress increases subluxation. You know how tight you get when you're stressed. Many of you have come in and we've asked, like, hey, why are you so tight this week? And you'll say, oh, I lost my job, or I have a family member sick, or I popped a tire, or whatever it might be. But the last T, and this is chiropractic philosophy that is over 100 years old. So this is not new research, but toxins. Toxicity exposure increases subluxation, causes your body to have to detoxify. So again, it affects your health. And it affects your overall functionality. A toxin, defined very simply, is a substance or chemical that we encounter that can cause damage to humans, whether it's immediate or over time. And that is where bioaccumulation becomes so important. I'll hear people say, well, I didn't have a side effect to that medication, or I'm not having an issue to this. I just recently started to have allergies or something like that. 9 out of 10 side effects that occur in medication consumption, and keep in mind, there are an average of 10 side effects that occur in your body. 9 out of 10 on average are silent. So you're not doing okay just because you can't feel what's going on in your body. In fact, that's what the slide from Max Living, they said, you are being lied to. Toxic chemicals are being marked as safe. And this is happening so incredibly frequently, like, oh, it's no big deal, it's this level toxin. Their Roundup or glyphosate there is so significantly linked to cancer. For those of you that take CBD or CBD gummies, why is that even necessary? Well, the pesticides in our food supply, or the pesticides or herbicides, the Roundups that you're using maybe in your garden or in your landscaping, the accumulation of that on food, which is in things like Cheerios and breads and all sorts of stuff that it's sprayed on, affects your body's ability to make something called an endocannabinoid. So something that you should naturally produce in your body is being depleted, and it's inhibited, or it's being stopped from being able to be produced. And so when people get deficient in that, they get more inflamed. And so ergo the explosion of the use of the nutraceutical CBD, so not a chemical like THC, but why CBD even relevant? Because your things in our system or our environment are stopping the body's ability to produce it. And there's no test to show if you're deficient. So, I'm going to make fun of one other thing, which is follow the science. You heard this for the last 3 years, follow the science, follow the science, follow the science. Well, it turns out openly the government and many government officials, including the top officials who have since retired, were lying. They openly are saying they lied. They lied about essentially every aspect of the safety of the things that were promoted. And they also openly acknowledged that they minimized natural immunity and its role in being healthy. And why? Well, it didn't fit the rhetoric, but natural immunity and helping your body heal itself are essential, again, to living a healthy life. So I'm going to read this slide, and this is the last one I'm just going to read off of, but it says, if you can't read it here, I'll bring it up, but toxic exposure is linked to, and here's just a whole plethora of things: a weakened immune system, allergies and asthma, diabetes. For all those of you who know a diabetic, toxin exposure is linked to diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer, the 3 biggest killers in America. And if you want to even go during pandemic times, a weakened immune system. We've now covered well over 80% of the causes toxic exposure affects that. Autism certainly has a genetic component linked to toxin exposure. We already mentioned ADD and ADHD, birth defects, hormone imbalances, reproductive disorders, Alzheimer's and dementia, autoimmune diseases. And there's more and more people yearly that are diagnosed with autoimmune disorders, neurological disorders, anxiety, depression, and mental health. A big, big reason. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time on this slide here, because this really comes down to what are some things that you can do. So where are some spots that you might need to change? So spot number 1, personal care products. I'm going to use some of the big ones. For women, makeup. Most makeup is petroleum-based or oil-based toxic. And when you put things on your skin, 25% on average is absorbed into your body. So the chemicals in that are linked to all sorts of damaging effects. Additionally, deodorants, antiperspirants specifically, have aluminum in there, which is neurotoxic and absorbs into your skin over time. Um, Getting a mineral-based makeup, getting non-aluminum-based deodorants, or things like Tom's of Maine. Crest, the toothpaste, was recently exposed for putting fillers of plastic into the toothpaste to make it cheaper. And those plastic are known endocrine disruptors, so they can affect your heart, testosterone production, estrogen production. So switching to a natural toothpaste, fluoride in toothpaste, kills your gut lining. I think at this point in time, almost everybody's aware that you have to protect your gut, and fluoride is shown to kill good bacteria in your gut, which can cause acid reflux, bloating, indigestion, and major absorption issues, as well as inflammation. So, I mean, these personal care products, switching out your antiperspirants, toothpaste, and makeup are three of the biggies. Household cleaners, things like putting bleach, especially if you're cleaning with it without gloves or smelling it in enclosed spaces. But there are so many cleaners and products that you can use with essential oils that are 100% safe and non-toxic. Buying laundry detergent, or if you have a dishwasher, the soap that you put in, putting a more natural soap or cleaner will make a big difference. When a dish is cleaned in a dishwasher, some of the soap stays on the plate unless you rinse them. Plastics. So for instance, storing things in plastics or freezing things in plastics can make a significant difference. And I'm going to pause for a second and just read this. And before I did, I remember when I worked at the hospital, people actually still microwave food in styrofoam, the take like that is absolutely horrible. You could have all organic broccoli and be cooking chemicals into it. And so here's something. Dr. Alex actually sent me this in preparation for this talk or this masterclass. But you'll hear people say really commonly, like, "Oh, it's just a little bit." So I'd like to read this to you and see what your thoughts are on it. But it's just a little bit of heavy metals in your food. It's just a little bit of benzene in your sunscreen. It's just a little bit of chlorine in your water. It's just a little bit of fluoride in your toothpaste. It's just a little bit of PFOAs in your nonstick pans. That's Teflon, which again is an endocrine disruptor. It's just a little bit of fragrance in your perfume. It's just a little bit of aluminum in your deodorant. It's just a little bit of phthalates in your plastic toys. But when does just a little bit become too much for the body to handle? And so I've quoted this a lot. And if you're a frequent attender on these, you've heard me say in the book, The Paleocardiologist, which is one of my favorite all-time books for being healthy, it talks about how in 2010 versus 1910, 2010 people come in contact with more toxins in 2 days than the average person in 1910 would come in contact with in their lifetime. That's how severely different it is. Processed foods, like I said, 30,000 chemicals that don't even have to be listed, let alone all the ones that are listed to allow it to be a processed food. The preservatives, the dyes, the colorings, the fillers, just absolutely horrible for you. And then genetically modified foods. In 1990, it's estimated that only about 10% of the food consumed in America was genetically modified. Now it is over 90%, just in a 30-year period. So we don't have great research or data, except that all these things combined that I'm listing off have led to radically more cancer, radically more heart disease, more autoimmune conditions than ever. So, I mean, the data is there. It's just there's so many causes that they won't just blame genetically modified. But to keep in mind, America is one of the few countries that allows genetic modification of foods at the level that it is. as many of you know or have heard me say, my father is a retired airline pilot. When you fly to Europe versus fly home from Europe, the food that you're allowed to serve on the airplane is radically different because of you have to abide by the laws of the country you're taking off in. And so even if you've ever been like, I was in Italy about 10 years ago, and McDonald's doesn't serve the same food because those countries don't allow the garbage amount of processes and chemicals that our country does. So keep that in mind. It's not like the McDonald's bread is the same all over, or Subway, which has components to keep that bread so specifically the same size, the same height. I mean, it has components in there that are used, if you've ever seen a yoga mat, to make a yoga mat the same thickness. I already mentioned and really made a point of the overuse of medications. Taking a pill instead of addressing the root cause of the problem has so many side effects and chemical components. And then, something you can't necessarily control is the air, but water, like here in Rockford, in certain districts, there's still a lot of lead in the pipes. There's, because of the way it's processed, water is got chlorine or chlorine disinfectant byproducts in it. It also, because water is reused, it has trace amounts of medications in it. So if you're not filtering your water through a carbon filter or a reverse osmosis filter, you're getting significant amounts of chemicals in your traditional tap and drinking water. So, simply buying a water filter or getting a whole home water filtration system can make a big difference in your overall health and wellness as a family. So over the next section here, we're going to cover 5 steps or 5 ways to terminate toxins. And we're going to focus the majority of the rest of today's class on the first one, which is the cutting of processed foods. Most common toxic foods. So think about this. Do you frequently eat fried foods, packaged foods, genetically modified foods, artificially colored foods, or artificially sweetened foods? And we've talked about basically everything except the artificial sweeteners, but artificial sweeteners are known neurotoxins. So what do I mean by this? Splenda, NutraSweet, Equal, sucralose. These are worse for you than any sugar, frankly. Like, they are so incredibly bad for you and so toxic, and they still do the same damage to your pancreas that sugar does. But they're known neurotoxins, meaning they're linked to everything from cancer to heart disease to dementia to multiple sclerosis to so many different things. Also getting them out of your body. So fried foods have half-life. There's all different studies, but 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. So if you feel like your diet is part of you being sluggish, it may take a month, 2 months, 3 months to really get some of this crap out of your system at a level that you can really feel significantly better. Like, it does take time to do so because of what I've said before, toxic bioaccumulation. So what do I mean? So toxic bioaccumulation means as we get older, if we're not actively detoxing our body, or if we're putting too many chemicals in compared to what our body can get out, you will get what's called toxic bioaccumulation. And so this also happens in the animals, the meats that you eat. So for instance, if you've ever been on our Shop with the Nutritionist or Shop with the Doc program, you know that if you're going to spend more money on organic or grass-fed, the first thing to switch to is your meat. Buying meat is 10 times more effective than, for instance, buying spinach, because you're not what you eat, but you're what that ate. And so the animal consumes so much of the non-organic produce to become meat that they hold a lot more toxicity. It's like, why does tuna known for having more heavy metals? Or why do they tell women when they're pregnant, or people, like, eat salmon, not tuna, if you're going to eat, fish, or try and get wild caught? Well, because a tuna might be 200 or 300 pounds and they live a lot longer, where salmon live a shorter amount of time. The omega-3 that we sell in the office, it's actually extracted from tiny fish, minnows, sardines, stuff like that, because, well, they have less heavy metals. And so bioaccumulation is a big deal. So when you're switching what you're spending money on, you want to switch meat, then dairy, then everything else. In fact, when you go if you come to a Nutrition 101 seminar, or if you go to on the shopping trip, you'll remember that there's even the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. What's the most common thing with the dirty dozen is, if you eat the skin, you should buy it organic. If you eat an apple, spinach, any of the things that are going to be in salads, versus an orange, a banana, an avocado, where you take the skin off, that's less important to buy organic if you're having to shop on a budget. So one way to detox is to eat healthier, is to cut out all the toxins you can in your diet. And so the advanced plan is what we call it. If you have our book, you've seen this before, but here's the main components of the advanced plan. And you can easily, so you're going to eat the healthier meats, grass-fed meats, wild caught fish, free-range poultry and eggs, eliminate refined carbohydrates and sugars. So there's 5 components to the advanced plan. Cutting out all refined, so no breads, no carbs, or no pastas, no rices, no nothing like that. Eating low glycemic fruits and vegetables only. So that's mostly for fruits like berries, green apples, things like that. You can get the exact list in the book. And then just avoiding starchy vegetables like potatoes, but eating lots of vegetables, no other refined food whatsoever, eating healthy meats, trying to increase your healthy fats, and avoid toxicity, and drink plenty of water. Water, so many people are dehydrated. Water is part of your body's natural way that it detoxes. Many people don't detox as efficiently because they don't have enough water in their system to flush out the toxins. So this is a very important thing. Now, also, I mentioned in the beginning, doing things like taking our detox supplement, or eating more fruits and vegetables, getting healthy raw juices. But so some of the things that are really good at detoxing is magnesium, chlorella, which is in the, like in the algae component, superoxide dismutase, psyllium husk, activated charcoal, and certain proteins, especially bone broth protein, which have a lot more minerals like the magnesium in them. So 2 ways to detox is to, for instance, make a morning smoothie with some of those fruits and vegetables in there. And again, in the back of your book, there are so many good smoothie recipes. If you don't have the book and you're not a current client, you can go on our website at rockford.maxliving.com, and you can look for different smoothie recipes. They're on there, but our detox supplement has most of this. I'm going to talk about 2 different things. So detox and bone broth. So the bone broth, we have a new formulation. We partnered with a gentleman named Jordan Rubin, who has in Tennessee a regenerative farm. So it uses its own animals and manure and all these things. And they specifically focus on making the soil the best it can possibly be. And so when they feed the vegetables and the things to the cattle are the healthiest they possibly can be. So this Pure Path bone broth protein, excellent for natural detoxification, full of magnesium. And like I said, our detox system, these are 2 things that can really help. If you're exercising and you're trying to build lean muscle, getting enough protein is essential to do so. So doing things like a protein shake in water can make a big difference. And we're going to cover 2 more topics here before we complete part 1. But the thing that it says here, what about supplements? 90% of supplements consumed are not good for you or are worthless. 90%. So again, when people go to GNC, Walgreens, Walmart, they tend to be so cheap. The FDA does not regulate quality in supplements. So supplements often have high heavy metal exposure. So like when you get the fish oil from Walmart, that is shown to often have way more heavy metals in it than even naturally eating fish. So it could be worse for you. It also may be full of fillers. Like if you put that omega-3 in the freezer, sometimes they freeze and they're not supposed to. That means it's not all fish oil in there. Um, Multivitamins, I mean, the drug company AstraZeneca actually funded a study to show that its own multivitamin is bad for you. It has too many fillers, too many chemicals, and it's synthetically made, and it actually causes more harm than good. Now, how many drug companies pay for studies and then publish them that their drugs aren't good for you? This many, this many right here. But they'll pay for their multivitamin to be shown that. Like, so think about that. So I don't care if you consume our supplements, but what I will tell you is you need whole food, properly made supplements that are tested for quality and potency. Potency means that it actually has the nutrients in there that it says on the back of the label. And people ask me all the time, well, what about this one? What about this one? There are some great companies out there, but just because you bought it from the health food store doesn't necessarily make it good. And they do tend to have a lot of toxicity. So I will not take random supplements. All right. Lastly, if you have any of these conditions, you should and probably need to sit down with Mackenzie and talk about what you can do to avoid this. So our program, we call it's Max Metabolics, but it's a metabolic. It's looking at how your body is processing nutrients, but also your gut and intestinal lining. But if you experience gas or bloating, indigestion, cramping abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation, or acid reflux symptoms, you have a problem with your digestive tract and it's affecting way more than that. And I have talked about this before, but acid reflux medication is one of the highest side effect rates of any medication, specifically linked to long-term issues with the absorption of nutrients and the cancer that's caused from doing so. So again, just taking an acid reflux medication, or if you've been on one for years, that should be a huge red flag or warning sign that you need to make some changes. Irritable bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome, eczema. Eczema is one of the toughest. Eczema is still a mystery at some level, but it is linked to your intestinal or gut health. And the sad part is there's been such a high use of antibiotics that, for instance, eczema can be caused for you without your fault, or for your child without even your fault, because it's passed from mother to child, or for C-section babies because they don't get the good bacteria from mom right at the beginning. But the saddest part of this is medically, eczema is treated with steroids, which just shove everything back in, don't address the root cause of the problem, and can cause major damage long term. And in fact, have been shown to inhibit or retard the body's ability to fix the problem. So they actually cause it to last into adolescence or adulthood. Allergies, depression, joint pain or joint aches, diabetes, weight issues. I mean, all these things are reasons. So if you have any of these things and you haven't met with Mackenzie, you can direct message us, email us at chiropracticfirst811@gmail.com, or schedule an appointment in the office. But those are complimentary with Mackenzie to have your nutritional health assessed. The first appointment is complimentary, and there are so many things, testing and protocols that you can do to live better, heal better, and be well. So with that being said, we're going to transition. Away from our first talk here. And the first word in the masterclass is magnesium. So first word is magnesium. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of 2. Be sure to join us on Tuesday for part 2. Have a very blessed day.